Hi everyone, Peter here from Flow High Performance, and in this video we'll cover how to create a mesocycle of training for the goal of muscle hypertrophy. For this video, we will continue with our example microcycle that was created in the previous video. As we can see here, we have a week of training with the exercises chosen for each session and the number of sets that will be performed per exercise. The next step we need to take to turn this microcycle into a mesocycle is to establish a basic structure. This means that we need to know how many weeks of overloading training will be performed before a deload is implemented. Generally, a deload is required after every 3 to 6 weeks of training on average for most trainees. For this example, let's structure the mesocycle to include 4 weeks of overloading training with a 1-week deload. So we can see here that week 1 of the mesocycle is the deload week, where volume will be reduced, and the next 4 weeks are overloading weeks, involving the volumes that were previously established. Let's now apply this to the microcycle that was previously established. So we can see here that week 1 uses around 1/3 less volume than the rest of the program to allow mental and physical recovery from the previous mesocycle. Next, we can apply general rep ranges and specific loads for each exercise. For hypertrophy purposes, we want to select a load that allows the trainee to perform the exercise in the rep range of 6 to 20, as a general rule. The exact number of reps performed each set doesn't necessarily matter to any significant extent, so long as the set is taken to an appropriate proximity to failure, as we will discuss shortly. However, one consideration that may be made when selecting the load and rep range to use is to consider if the exercise is a compound or isolation lift. Generally, compound lifts are better suited to the lower end of our rep range recommendations, while isolation exercises are generally better suited to the higher end of these recommendations. This is because compound lifts involve many muscle groups, and certain stabilizer muscles may fatigue before the target muscles, or cardiovascular fitness may limit muscle adaptations. For example, a trainee may lose stability in their trunk stabilizers or run out of breath during a set of 15 back squats before their quads fully fatigue. On the other hand, isolation exercises will never be limited by other muscle groups, although heavy loads may place too much stress on one joint. For example, during bicep curls for a set of 6 reps with a heavy load, will place lots of stress directly on the elbow joint and may cause irritation over time. So for our example trainee, let's now implement rough rep ranges that we want to perform each exercise in. The rep ranges don't have to be exactly what will be performed, but rough ranges should be selected. As we can see here, rep ranges have been selected for each exercise for each session. It should also be noted that the rep ranges undulate throughout the week for each session. So we can see here that Monday uses lower rep ranges than Thursday for the same exercises, and the same idea has been implemented for the other sessions. By undulating rep ranges and loads, it provides a slight variation throughout the week. This may allow fast twitch fibers to be slightly emphasized with lower rep ranges, and slow twitch fibers to be emphasized more with higher rep ranges. Now, loads relevant for these rep ranges need to be chosen. Load selection should simply be selected from trial and error and experience. For this trainee, let's say the following loads have been selected for each exercise. As expected, the loads are heavier for the sessions with lower rep ranges, and the loads are lighter for the exercises with higher rep ranges. Next, we need to establish what proximity to failure is necessary for best muscle growth. Proximity to failure is usually measured using the rate of perceived exertion scale, or the reps in reserve scale. These scales allow trainees to subjectively rate how many reps they had left before failure of the set. For hypertrophy training, we need sets to be taken to at least 4 reps in reserve to ensure that all muscle fibers are recruited and trained during each set. Generally speaking, lower rep sets don't need to be taken as close to failure, as heavier loads will recruit all muscle fibers much sooner, while higher rep sets need to be taken closer to failure to ensure that all muscle fibers are recruited and trained. For this program, we will use a proximity to failure of 0 to 4 reps in reserve. Now we need to apply progressive overload throughout the 5-week mesocycle. There are multiple ways that progressive overload can be applied in a program, although we'll simply cover one method. For this example, we will simply maintain volume and load while the reps performed increases throughout the mesocycle. We will apply this into our program by prescribing specific reps in reserve. As we can see here, the reps in reserve increases over the mesocycle. The compound lifts have been prescribed with more reps in reserve, ranging from 4 in the first 2 weeks to 1 in the 5th week. The isolation exercises use less reps in reserve since they can generally benefit more from high proximities to failure. So the isolation exercises range from 3 reps in reserve to 0 in the 5th week, meaning that complete failure is reached. So now that the mesocycle is complete, the trainee can go ahead and perform the program for the next 5 weeks. Naturally, more reps should be performed with each set every week, as the trainee will be taking each set closer and closer to failure. The trainee should then record how many reps were performed each set throughout the program to see how they are responding to the program. In the next video, we will cover how to periodize hypertrophy training from mesocycle to mesocycle. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of this video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already.